All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Kosuke July Hata, who's the founder CEO of Fost, maker of the ROC Camera. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks for
I'm
making the
excited
time.
that you're here too. I think I found you online on Twitter, I think, and you're building something fascinating. So I'm really excited to dive into it. Let's just start with tell us more about Rock. What are you building with Rock Camera?
Yeah, so we're building a camera that can take verifiably real photos in the age of AI. The the premise really, I mean, you might have noticed recently with ChatGPT and everything is there's just AI slop in the form of images everywhere. It's just increasingly becoming harder to tell what images are actually real. And we've been thinking a lot about how to make cameras that can help you feel like the photos were taken by humans.
So let's dive a little deeper here. So is the form factor? It's an actual camera. How can you let me walk me through? If I was to have one of these and take a picture, how do I know that it's real? How does someone that's looking at the picture know that it's real? Maybe take us a level deeper here.
Yeah, so what we really have at the core uh, on the camera is sensor attestation in the form of there's like a private key that essentially proves that this device only has this key. And as the sensor data comes in, in the form of in the camera, it's like a CMOS sensor. We sign that data and also create a proof around it that then later on, attached to the photo, can be verified that it only could have been taken by this device. This photo could have only ever been taken by this device. And so eventually, as we add more things in the future, it becomes like you can prove that a certain photo was taken at a certain place at a certain time and only by this device.
So I have tons of questions, but I want to before going into them around how it works and what the implications are for the future. Let's go back a little bit. What's the origin story here? When did you decide you wanted to build this camera and maybe when you started Fost, how long after you started it do you decide to build Rock Camera?
Yeah, so my background is more robotics. I've done autonomous vehicles, parking garage robots. Was at Kitty Hawk building flying cars for Larry Page and Sebastian Thrun for about half a decade. So sensors, devices, all these things. That's sort of the world that I come from, mostly as a as a software engineer. Um, the One of the things that we were looking at initially was actually all these sensors. They're getting increasingly cheaper. There's lots of interesting, exciting new sensors coming online. Is one of the things we realized. Um, the amount of sensor data that gets generated. There's just tremendous amounts of sensor data that gets generated, and in the longer run, there was just this feeling of how I wanted to build a camera. I wanted to build stuff that actually people could use, humans could use, and we actually initially built a prototype, a camera. We wanted to pick a space that, uh, you know, harbors a competitive space. So like Apple and Samsung and all these, even Sony. How do we like go against those kind of companies? And so we actually chose a space that at the time, like 2022 or so, crypto was pretty unpopular. Or not unpopular, but kind of undervalued, I would say, as a market, and found that there was like a dearth of devices that were not in that space. So part of it started with actually kind of okay, let's try to build a device for this space, and part of the thing that we built as a prototype was building sensor attestation for hardware key enabled sensor attestation for sensors as a sort of basis for cameras. And then it became kind of a journey of how do we actually find a market for that.
That's fascinating. You you have a crazy background. Can you tell us like maybe one or two things you've learned from working on Kitty Hawk and just working with like these like incredible founders? What do you take from that experience?
Probably could just do another podcast on that alone. I have a lot of stories, and yeah, I think that my takeaway is anything is pretty much buildable in a long enough time span, and if you get a lot of folks, it's more, yeah, the technical side of things in a way is not the hard part, with enough time, right? Like if you have a long enough timeline, a lot of things become possible. I think also working with a lot of really capable founders and engineers, there's kind of a lack of what's kind of the best way to describe it? It's almost like not. It's sort of like expected that you can pretty much do anything and build anything. There's sort of no. There's a lot. I think there's like a fearlessness, and people support a lot of capable engineers that I've worked with are almost sort of by default, like kind of work with the premise that difficult or impossible things are just doable.
Well, everything was impossible before someone did it, right? And if someone's
Exactly.
technical, right, if someone has the skills to build on their own, there really is nothing that can't be done, with the right technology, right? So that's awesome. Well, it's just you must have such a dearth of experience there and memories. It will, in a few years, when this is a market and kind of huge, we can go back and do a podcast on your experience on your history. But moving forward, so I'm on your website here. Um, it looks like you like walk me through when you take a picture. Like I order the camera, I have the camera, I take the picture right here. What is happening? Like in my experience, what do I see with my own eyes when I take a
Yeah.
picture with the camera?
So again, just like as a preface for this, right now it's still not production ready, and there's sort of changes that we're making and updates to the software that we're doing, and so very V1, very very early. But the experience goes something like this. So when you get the device, you connect it to Wi-Fi, and once it's connected, there's well, you can actually take a photo without it being connected to Wi-Fi, but really it's just an interface. You take a photo by really just pressing the button. The thing that's sort of abnormal is the zero knowledge proof that we do, the sort of proof that we actually do on the device, takes about 30 to 40 seconds to actually take a photo because of the computational limitations. We actually initially thought that was kind of oh, this is going to deter people, but something interesting, just as a side note, that we've noticed is a lot of our customers have provided feedback saying, I actually really like that aspect because it feels like I'm actually taking a digital sort of like real photo, kind of like a Polaroid. And so we've gotten actually positive feedback around that, which was honestly pretty surprising, even though we shipped it thinking we would fix it in the near term. The photo currently, we're building the features to make it verifiable. So if you sort of export the photo, then it becomes, well, in the future we'll be releasing sort of a verifier in open source SDK that allows for people to essentially verify certain data, proof data about the photo that matches with the device or not.
So I think on a high level, I understand the utility here. In an age
Yep.
of AI, what's real, what's not, what's verifiable. So on a high level, this is a no brainer, right? Of course, this needs to exist. Like someone's going to build this, why not you? I feel like on a lower level, can you like walk me through maybe some, I don't know if the word is use cases, but like once you take a picture and it's verifiable, how, can you explain to me ways that this can be useful to either the photo taker or someone looking at the photo once it's already processed?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're initially thinking, there's a few areas that we think is going to be interesting. So number one is the verifiable part can, once we sort of build a fuller SDK around the photos themselves being verifiable, I think, is going to increasingly essentially provide an alternative value to photos that are, compared to photos that are not verifiable. So they'll have a unique value in that something can be done with sort of real photos that have this proof versus photos that aren't real. So this could be in the form of a variety of different things. So one thing could be in the longer timeline, AI data provenance for training, for example. So you have all these photos that are actually proven to be real, right? Like trained on synthetic data over a long enough period of time produces poorer results as well in pre-training. So we've seen that that's going to increasingly become important as the sort of internet landscape is increasingly synthetic data. These types of data are going to be important. The second one is having actual verifiable data for, in the longer run as well, robotics and actual devices and vehicles that are out in the real world will, I think, increasingly need real data for each other that proves that certain things have happened or certain things have taken place. The more obvious immediate version of that is also for humans to be able to prove, certain, like photojournalism, law, all these things are things that we've looked into. As we need, increase the sort of verifiability and the robustness of that proof, it can be something that this has actually happened instead of it just being a photo. And then the third part is kind of more intangible, but we've actually, this is the path that we've initially gone down, which is that people feel that the photos that they're taking aren't sort of considered important. So we've talking with some artists and other people, photographers that are, have tens of thousands of followers on Instagram. They're posting photos from rooftops on top of a skyscraper or something, and all their comments are saying, "Oh, this is just AI." And so, how do you combat that on a social network? How do you actually prove that these photos are real? Is another area that we're exploring through alternative social networks like Blue Sky and AppProto, as well as Farcaster, which is a Web3 social network, and other places to how do you embed the proof into to the actual photos, as well as in the future other more legacy web based media. So those are the kind of three areas that we're looking at.
That all makes sense. Super interesting. It's like essentially a new type of data set that was not necessary 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but is more than necessary today and moving forward. So this is like a physical product. Obviously, you can't build this in Lovable and ship something in a weekend. This is this is physical. How have you managed your own and maybe your team's psychology on saying, hey, here's what we're building, here's the vision, but knowing that it's going to take a little time to produce? And if you're open to sharing whatever you're fine with, maybe like from the moment that you got the idea for the camera to maybe where you are now, like how long has that taken, and how do you just manage psychology around not having something shipped yet but working towards that every day?
That's a great question. We initially built a proof of concept of this sensor attestation with microcontrollers and a sensor that we had back in 2020, late 2022. It was the sort of first proof of concept that was done. We actually explored a lot of different versions of we even looked at climate change and other sort of climate tech, like being able to attest for carbon offsets and things like this as well. We looked into journalism, we looked into media, different areas that we could go with. Eventually landed on building a camera in about 20. We tried to ship a device in around 23, and then 24 we ended up building, finally kind of arriving at this thesis of building a camera that can take real photos in the age of AI. Open pre-orders October 2024, and it took us about a year with a very small team to be able to deliver a very, I would say, crude, but proof of something that can be built. To answer that question, I think coming from hardware, I'm used to longer timelines is part of the thing, and every hardware or robotics project that I've been a part of, it takes a good amount of time, and especially to actually ship to customers is something that is requires a lot of patience, I guess. So in that sense, it's not out of the ordinary, but yeah. Also, our team is some former Kitty Hawk engineers and former Tesla, and I'm based in the SF Bay Area, and so part of it is we know some of these things are going to take a good amount of time, and that's another reason why we also picked hardware, but into a space initially that we knew we weren't going to get immediate competition in as well.
Well, I feel like it's hardware, which lots of people building in hardware, I guess, but it's like the crossover, like with the specific function that you're building, it is not obvious. The problem that you're solving, I think it's obviously a problem, but I think solutions are not obvious at all,
Yeah.
and yours is quite thoughtful. Maybe I guess one question, kind of going off of the last one, was yeah, like maybe can you talk through how you ended up landing on this model, or this kind of specific idea, or this form factor? You mentioned you were thinking about like climate change for a bit, probably figuring out the right way to build it. Like, how did you know that this was the right way when you or someone on your team just landed on it?
Yeah, I think back in sort of mid 2024, we were trying a lot of different products and running into sort of different kinds of products that we could build, and difficulty in deciding. And I was in Ireland, like on a trip, and uh, I was taking some photos in nature, and I think this was around the time when some of the image generation stuff increasingly was getting better, and I took this really nice photo, and I wanted to share with my friends, and my first thought was, oh wait, people are going to think this is AI. And that was sort of like I had this realization that wait, this is the problem that we should probably take a stab at. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't know if that was what was worth doing, but we thought, okay, well, what if we just build a camera that takes photos that don't, that are not AI, using the technology that we've been kind of working on. Then we started really going into doing customer interviews for that thesis, and how it resonated and what people would use it for. And I think we did about probably over 100 customer interviews thinking through that thought process, at least messaging wise, with folks. And then we sort of like opened the pre-orders.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's super helpful to just hear the timeline and process that go into this. Like a lot of first time founders, a lot of my listeners are just like they want to build something, but they don't know what's normal, what they see on Twitter. So just hearing the story is helpful. Changing the tune a little bit. You're in the Bay Area. I talk a lot about the Bay Area on the podcast. I'm in Phoenix. I know the power of the Bay Area for building, and I think a lot of folks are figuring out, should they build where they're at? Should they move to the Bay Area? Maybe for you, do you get like today? Not, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of benefit of being in that area over a period of time. But today, do you plug into the Bay Area heavily while building your company? Are you more just like in a like a garage just building this out, or are you out in the community networking and building relationships?
I mean, I think I have a unique situation in the sense that I've been in the Bay Area for the SF Bay Area for about the past 10 years or so, and working in this area specifically more in robotics before a lot of the robotics stuff has been hot and hardware stuff has been hot. So, I've uh, like grateful for sort of just lucky to be in this like position for sure, as it feels like there's more increasing interest in hard tech and things like this. Um, I still think plenty of there's certain kinds of hardware and certain kinds of startups that I think do really well in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then I think there's increasingly more different companies that can be done or anywhere, and then there's also like certain other companies that I think have to be done in other places but are not San Francisco. So it's not as a straightforward of an answer, but it just really, again, as with all of these kinds of things, it's like it just depends. But place does matter in a way that is hard to fake. I would say one thing about the San Francisco Bay Area that I think is unique is there is a acceptance of outrageous, like the level of outrageous ideas that are accepted here by default is a lot wider. That is a both good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
a net positive. A net positive.
oh, definitely. Well, it's you go to SF, you say you want to change the world, and people are like, "How can I help?" Versus that's crazy. One of the things that I spent a little time doing very recently actually is I live really close to Arizona State University, and these days, I consider Arizona State like a very good research university more than it was maybe 2 or 3 decades ago. So there's all these smart founders that are there, but they're just surrounded by not the greatest tech scene in the world. So I'm starting to build community at ASU, and trying to be that guy, for the people that want to build something big, be like, hey, like you should, or like, how can I help? Because Mix Panel started here, and like Air Garage started here. A lot of great companies started in state colleges that like weren't in California, but it's just they adopt. You guys adopt these like big thinkers, and I think it would behoove other scenes to do that. Although easier said than done, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot. I think yeah. To me, it's like great. A lot of great companies and great startups can come from anywhere. Uh, I do think certain kinds of environments help them grow to get to the next level. But I think they can come from anywhere.
Oh yeah, I fully believe that. I mean, I've interviewed, probably my like 900 and maybe 75th interview. Give or take 5 episodes, and yeah, I mean like the people that I meet on here that eventually move to SF or don't move to SF but are not in a hub when I interview them is just like it's fascinating. Definitely, what's the phrase like? Talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not, something like that. Talent is everywhere, all across the world, no doubt. Well, I guess a couple more questions for you, then we'll call it a day. Like, how do you think about the future here? Like, you're building something very innovative, something very needed, something where like there's not a lot of precedent on what this should look like. So, how do you know? I guess how do you know what to build next, or like the next year or two? How do you even decide what you need to do? Is it vision? Is it what market wants? Is it both? How do you decide what comes next here?
Yeah, it's a great. It's something that I think about probably every day in some capacity. Especially during this time, like now that we're done with V1, we we're now like ideating for what we're doing next. I think leading up to life is really great between selling pre-orders and then delivering them because you know exactly what needs to be done. And it's like there's no existential crisis about who you are as a person. Once you're kind of out of that, it's all over again and you need to figure it out. Um Full intention is I think we're going to be scaling to thousands of devices, then 10,000 of devices, and hundreds of thousands of devices, and millions of devices is our goal. So in that capacity, we want to, however it is, figure out a way to continue to build cameras and other devices potentially in the future that help people, share their more like real moments with others. And in a how do we do that? We're not 100% sure, but we know that we're doing a V2. We know that we're going to be launching some products between now and the end of the year as well, and a few more, and incrementally increasing the trying to see if our hypotheses are sort of vaporware or if they've got legs. And most of them are probably not going to work, but we're going to see how to kind of test those hypotheses as much as we can. That being said, we also are working in hardware and we have some very real limitations in terms of time and resources. So as we shoot for like thousands of devices in V2 next year, we've got some concrete plans that we need to execute and sort of bet on. So we're working towards validating messaging and sort of thinking about the product for V2, even though it's going to be an iteration of V1, as well as distribution channel. How do we sort of like do that? As well as we're also doing our manufacturing as well. So how do we actually like scale to meet that demand? But ultimately it comes down to what is the product, who is it for, and why is it actually going to be good for the people that we sell these, who are our customers and why would they buy it, is downstream. Like everything is downstream of that, essentially.
I guess going off of that, who is the ideal persona to pre-order or to purchase the camera as of today? I'm guessing it's not like your average consumer. Is it someone that's more techie, or like walk me through who would be your ideal purchaser today?
Yeah, we've got, I think, our ideal customer, and this is like the reason why we chose sort of technical crypto, and I mean like cryptography related, but blockchain engineers have been very good. Other people are sort of people who understand the space of like wanting to be more self-sovereign and wanting to kind of own their photos in some way and feel so people in that space, like technical people who are in crypto who want some other use case other than gambling, have been very, very good with our cameras. That's been like one of our highest, and want to build something interesting and real. And then I think the other one that's increasing is people who are consumers but are very conscious of AI and want something different, and who are sort of like early adopters in that space and want to take photos that are real and share them, are and want to test new things. Those are the two that have really resonated in terms of personas.
Cool. And I guess to round us out, if someone wanted to learn more about your camera, your company, yourself, where can someone go online? Maybe what's your website or any social media profiles that you want to drop?
Yeah, roc.camera is our website, so definitely find us on there. Our ROC is roc.camera. That's our website. My Twitter is 0x July, so you can also, or X, I guess as it's called these days, so you can find me there as well. And those would probably be the two places that are probably the most interesting. We'll have some more like blogs and other things in the future, but you can find me at those places and follow along.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, thanks for taking the time to. Well, thanks for sending me a message and finding me.
Well, the power of X, right? Have
Exactly.
a good one.
Thanks.